This is Holy Cross Orthodox Church in Linthicum, Maryland, and we've completed our iconography program now. Took about 2 years, so I wanted to take a look around the church and show you how things turned out. We'll start by going up close to the altar. Our community moved into this church in 1997, and soon after that, one of our parishioners built this mahogany iconostasis for it, and Carolyn Shuey-Gundiff painted the icons. We also commissioned icons from an iconographer in Gaithersburg, Maryland. His first name is Michael and last name starts with a P, and I can't remember his last name. But he did the ones that are up in the apse there, the mandilion that's above the arch, and the archangels on either side. When Seraphim O'Keefe came into our church to start the iconography, there was nothing else on the wall except framed icons. So he painted directly on the walls. Everything that's painted directly on the wall is Seraphim's work. Just behind the altar, we see the communion of the apostles. Christ is giving communion to St. Peter on our left, St. Paul on our right, and the other apostles are grouped behind him in varying degrees of awe and astonishment. This is not the icon of the Last Supper, which is called the mystical supper, the mystical communion. This is the communion of the apostles. It's not historical because St. Paul was not there that day. This is an image of essentially the spiritual communion of the Eucharist taking place in eternity. There was some more room here behind the iconostas. So Seraphim put the great liturgists, St. John Chrysostom, St. Gregory Dialogus, or St. Gregory the Great as he's known in the West, on this side. And around the other side, we've got two great liturgists, St. James, the brother of the Lord who wrote the very first liturgy, and St. Basil the Great. Both St. Basil and St. John Chrysostom made kind of edited copies of St. James's liturgy and shortened it a bit. And underneath the arch here, there are a number of theologians, St. Gregory Palamos, Nectarius, St. Nicholas of Myra, St. Blaise. We have St. Blaise relic in our altar, St. Gregory of Nyssa, and St. Gregory the theologian, who happens to be my husband's patron saint. We can make a circle going around the church. Here we have an icon of Christ's body, crucified body. It's called a corpus that was made by Carolyn Shuey-Gundiff way back 20 years ago when we first started the church. Other parishioners made the cross, and it's the cross and image of Christ's body, the crucified Christ, that we use on Holy and Great Friday. So we had those elements for quite a long time. We decided, instead of having them standing in the church, to hang them on the wall, and Seraphim painted the icons of the Theotokos and St. John on either side of it, and the angels grieving above. Something else Seraphim did is that he painted a curtain with crosses on it all the way around the church at the lower level. I don't know for sure, but I assume it was the custom in some churches in the old country where it could get very, very cold. Perhaps they actually put curtains around the lower walls to give a little bit of insulation, and then those would often be decorated with embroidery. On the right here, this pretty cross is actually a cross I have. It was a cross that my grandmother gave me when I got married, and the cross on the left is the cross of St. Cuthbert, great saint of Great Britain, and a garnet and gold cross that was found in his tomb when it was opened. So my husband has a copy of that as one of his pectoral crosses. Seraphim put our two crosses on either side with a cross from Georgia in the middle because we have a great attachment at Holy Cross to St. Nina of Georgia. She's been an important saint to us. And having looked down, let me look up. Over here, above the row of central icons, there are images of the miracles that Jesus did in the Gospel of John. This side of the wall, it's the Gospel of John. We see the raising of Lazarus, healing of the man born blind, feeding of the 5,000, various of the miracles from the Gospel of St. John up at the top. And when I turn around, you'll see the miracles from the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They're called the Synoptic Gospels because they're similar. They resemble each other. The Synoptic miracles on the other wall, the north wall of the church. Because we have these very nice, large, arched windows. This church was built, I think, 1913. So it's wonderful old stained glass. The arches take up a lot of room, and we have these little bits of corners. And Seraphim had the brilliant idea of putting stylites in them. So the stylites, St. Daniel the stylite here fits very well. We have St. Joseph the Betrothed. He's the patron of the Men's Fellowship at Holy Cross. St. Nina of Georgia, the patron of the Women's Fellowship. We'll see her on the other side. St. Vincent of Saragossa, the deacon, is also a saint that we have his relics in our altar. And you'll see the space beneath the arch here was not really wide enough to have doors facing the congregation. So the doors kind of go around the corner here. And we have our deacons next to the doors instead of actually on the doors. On this end, the other side of the iconostasis, St. Simeon the Younger, another stylite. And here is St. Nino of Georgia. The Georgians call her Nino, while the Russians call her Nina. That sounds more familiar to Americans. And the proto-martyr Stephen, another deacon for the deacon's door on this side, and very dear to us, of course, because our son Stephen is a priest in Tennessee. Up above, as I mentioned, these are miracles all drawn from the Synoptic Gospels, the woman with the issue of blood, the healing of Jairus' daughter, and the raising of the son of the widow of Nain, and more miracles going all the way to the back wall there. And directly facing the crucifixion icon is this icon of the resurrection. Seraphim is painted it right here behind the chanter's stand, and Christ is raising Adam and Eve, grasping them by their wrists, pulling them up out of the tombs. And beneath them we see the locks and chains of the evil one, now all broken, fallen into the abyss. Before I continue down the rest of the church, though, let me show you this doorway. This is the door that leads to the sacristy. And here's St. Constantine and Helen up top, because our church is named Holy Cross. But I really like what Seraphim did here with this border on either side. It starts out just as a sort of a geometric border in these nice soft colors, but as it comes up, as it reaches the top, they sort of spring to life and turn into flowers that are twining around the cross and turning different colors and bearing different shaped flowers. He said that just sort of came to him while he was painting it. He did paint directly on the wall. He didn't do any tracing. He had a reddish-brown paint that he said basically it's mud, and just mixed with water, and he would sketch it with his fingers or a big thick brush on the wall, and then bit by bit paint over it. So this lovely design of the flowers, the vines that sort of spring free as they reach the cross, just something that came to Seraphim's mind. As I said, we have the icon of the resurrection to the left, to the north side of the iconostasis, the icon of the crucifixion on the south side to the right. And when you come past these big windows, come back one more time, and here we have a group of martyrs on each side, martyrs on this side and martyrs facing them across. Proto-martyr Thecla, equal to the apostles, the great martyr George, the trophy bearer, great martyr Demetrius, the myrrh gusher, and young Saint Artemius, who is the patron of our youth group. And looking on the other side and not going too fast because I know it makes you dizzy. Here we are. On this side, Hiram martyr Ignatius of Antioch, the new martyr Elizabeth, the Grand Duchess, and St. Alban, the proto-martyr of Britain. A number of people have remarked that St. Ignatius of Antioch bears a resemblance to Father George Calciu, who was my spiritual father, and also Seraphim's spiritual father. He said he didn't intend that at all, but he recognizes that's sort of the way it came out. So that may be just a gift to us because our parish loves St. George very much. Here I am calling him St. George, Father George Calciu, but perhaps it's only a matter of time. And now looking at the groups facing each other toward the back of the church, here is a group of monastics, St. Bridget of Kildare, St. Anthony the Great, St. Silouan the Athonite. Down in front, St. Seraphim of Sarov, and St. Mary of Egypt beseeching the Lord. And as I said, more of those synoptic gospel miracles up at the top. On the wall closest to the door of the church, this is the first icon that Seraphim painted here at Holy Cross, and it's a grouping of all the saints of North America. You can see in the front St. Peter the Aleut and St. Herman of Alaska, very beloved saints. All the other saints are clergy or hierarchs. And at the very top, you see they're right next to St. Jacob, almost in the center, is Blessed Olga Michael, who was a Marushka and who led a very holy life, and miracles are starting to accrue in her name. We love Blessed Olga, even though she's not a saint yet, and we received a blessing to go ahead and put her in the group of North American saints, even though she has not been officially recognized yet as a saint. And up in the corner here, there's St. Brendan in his boat, making his way to North America. The west wall of Holy Cross Church is the last thing that Seraphim did here. Started with that group of saints of North America, which is right here to our left, and ended up with this back wall. There were so many things we wanted to put up here. We were just having to whittle it down to our favorite saints at this point. So at the very top, we have the hospitality of Abraham, with Abraham and Sarah coming and bringing food to the three men, the three angels that came to visit them. On this side, we have the prophet David, the hymnographer David, saying, "Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered." Below him, just some of our favorite saints. There's St. Xenia of Petersburg, St. Paisios, St. Panteleimon, St. John of Kronstadt, St. Cuthbert again. And in this circle here, these two women saints are St. Perpetua and St. Felicity, which was a wonderful surprise for me because my patron saint is St. Felicity. Notice, too, how many birds Seraphim has woven into these grapevines. I forget what the total number is. It's a lot. There are a lot of birds here. But one of the things you'll notice is we are in Baltimore, Maryland, and there's a baseball team called the Orioles. And here's an Oriole right here looking very closely at St. Cuthbert. And over here is a raven, because we have a football team called the Baltimore Ravens. A raven is bringing the prophet Elijah some bread, just as he did in the Old Testament. Below him, St. Mitrophon of Beijing, St. Moses the Ethiopian, St. Zenaida, St. Joseph of Damascus, St. Sophrony and St. Porphyrius, and St. Haralambos. Below, it's the choir of the angels surrounded by some particular hymnographer saints, St. Ephraim and St. John on the left, St. John of Damascus, and on the right, St. Cassiani and St. Romanos. Finally, at the bottom on this side, just before you go out the door, to accompany us out the door, there's a group of missionaries to remind us that is our job. We're to bring the gospel. We're to be witnesses and tell the story of how God has worked in our lives. So many missionaries here, St. Lydia, St. Ansgar, St. Nicholas of Japan, St. Ninian, St. Columba, St. Stephen of Perm, St. Methodius, St. Kirill, St. Sava. St. Olga, St. Gregory of Armenia, St. Augustine of Canterbury, St. Aidan, down at the bottom, St. Photinis, St. Patrick, St. Cosmas, and St. Boniface. And St. Photinis, who was the very first to preach the gospel to anybody. After her conversation with Jesus at the well, she went back into the town and said, "You must come and hear this man. Maybe this is the Christ." So she's not resting on her laurels. She's ready to go. She's got her pitcher, and she's about to walk out the door and accompany us back into the world where we need to bear witness to our faith. Such a wonderful job that Seraphim did here. Such a beautiful array of icons. We're very, very pleased with it. It's made the church feel a lot smaller, but a lot more full, a lot more full of activity and intensity. It's been just a wonderful thing, such a blessing to us. This iconography is by Seraphim O'Keefe, and it's in Holy Cross Orthodox Church in Linthicum, Maryland, and we just love it.